So today, man, we brought Livingston on. Well, I guess we can go over some credentials. Livingston doesn't have any anyway, Cindy, so it's not really it's nothing worthy of note. So just quick, so me and Bruce Bruce and I have been teaching all the techniques and all the different. We've pretty much covered a lot. So I thought maybe this last one, me and Bruce were talking or Bruce and I were talking, that maybe we would try to do something a little different. And today, one of the things that we haven't talked about, which is probably the most important, is everything that goes into training that's outside of actual training. Like as far as your life outside of training, because especially in America, it's pretty difficult. But we'll get into that in 1 second. I just thought we'd go over the credentials because I knew Livingston was going to be here. I started, this is why I wanted Livingston to do it with us too, is because I started doing this probably I'm 33, so 18, what is that, 15 years?
Yeah.
So 15 years ago, over 15 years ago. So I've been doing that for 15 years. I haven't done much in the last, I think I fought twice 2 years ago. And then I had on my knee, so I hadn't done anything. So I've kind of transitioned more into a coaching role. So I might come back and do something one day. So I've done I think I've won nationals 10 times. I've done Pan Ams and Worlds and stuff like that. And then then Livingston is kind of right after me. I think he's probably at least training with us 12 years. So he's kind of right behind me. He's not much younger than me either. I'm 33. I think Liv's 32?
I'll be 32.
So he's 31. And then Bruce is 27? 26. So Bruce is kind of a little bit younger than probably the next little generation under us. And then now some of the younger guys coming into the team, like Vincent's a lot younger than you.
Yeah.
He's 22, something like that. Evan will be an adult this year. I think he's going to be 18. Yeah. So there's this new generation that's coming in. Livingston's won Pan Ams. He's won nationals a lot. He's been on a world team twice. Bruce has been on a world team twice, won nationals a lot. He's won some fights in Taiwan and stuff like that. So we all have credentials, but I think one of the biggest things, and we'll get into this in a second, is how each of us probably see. Me and Livingston probably see this the same way. Maybe not Bruce and probably not Vincent. So not in a bad way, just to kind of give this different mentality we have on training this sport and inside and outside of actually doing it. So first thing we were talking about is how does training and competing help with the rest of our lives? So who wants to go first?
I'll go first. Well, I think the process of training and competing instills in you a really firm sense of discipline. You have to be disciplined not only in your training itself and showing up to the gym, ready to train, ready to learn and whatnot, but also preparing for that. So you and I work, we have families, we have other obligations. So that's part of the discipline. We have to be disciplined not only in how we prepare for competition, but our family lives and making sure that everything is set up to where we can dedicate the time necessary to go in and actually train hard for as much as we can to get ready to compete.
Right. And then so somebody like Bruce, he doesn't have a wife. He has a girlfriend. I don't know how, but he has a girlfriend, but he doesn't have a wife and he doesn't have a kid. So now so what do you think about that?
Well,
so competing and the rest of your life.
I think Mackenzie is right. When you're training, you have to be disciplined, And also, most people my age, everybody likes party, drinking at the weekend. And we still train on the weekend, and you want to have enough rest to recover your body. And also, important thing is cutting weight. If you want to party the weekend, man, there's no way you can make weight easier. So I think really, this sport gave me the good lesson for my life is if you want to approach your goal, you must be disciplined now.
It's a necessity, especially I think for any country or team that's not sponsored, right? Because there's no way that you can, for us, training full-time really isn't a possibility. We have to work. There are other things that we have to take care of. We have to juggle and do multiple things. So to make sure you have to approach it in a very structured and disciplined manner, just if this is something you want to pursue, you have to be regimented in a lot of things and in how you conduct your life. So
I think like out of the three of us, I'm the only one who has a kid, and I'm about to have another one. I think so it's the same as what they said. I think probably the difference between like maybe us three and guys like that will be probably on the team coming up, like, or, a guy like Vincent or Evan, who's going to, Evan is only 17, but he's a stud. So I'm going to go ahead and throw him in there, and I'm pretty confident he'll make the team. But a guy like him or that age, or any guy that's 18, their responsibilities are just not on the same level. So like you start to run into a problem of like, I only have so much time in the day. And the older I get, the more responsibilities I have. And younger guys, some parents like going back to training full time. In the U.S., it's possible sometimes for guys to train, and it's the same. I imagine it's the same thing in Taolu and other sports. It's possible for you to train full time, but you have two options. You're either going to have to, your parents or somebody would have to sponsor you so that you don't have to worry about meeting those requirements as far as life goes. Yeah. And then second would be, or the quality of life you have to decide on how you want to live is another issue. Like if you want to live in a van and work on the weekends, you could probably train full time. It's really hard to do, and it's like why the countries that are sponsored, they're not living in vans, and so in America, it's really hard to keep up with that kind of level. As far as like, how has it helped the rest of our lives? I would say for me, it's probably because if you do, it's really difficult to do. So when you do that, when you compete and you train really hard and you do it for a long time, everything else in life seems to be pretty easy. Like, so like I like Livingston has 2 degrees. He has a really good job in the oil industry. Bruce has a PhD in good haircuts. And me, like after I blew out my knee, like I went back to school and I was really nervous, going back to college at 30 years old. But man, it's just been so easy because of the lessons and just like what Bruce was saying, like you have the schedule. This is when I train. This is when I eat. This is when I sleep. This is when I spend time with my wife, or this is when I spend time with my kids. So all I had to do was just make time and shove in and substitute some, school stuff in there. Out of the three of us, I know the answer to this, but I'll talk about it for everybody else. Do we train other martial arts? So Livingston has a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He does a lot of Western wrestling at his gym. He lives in Oklahoma. I have a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and Bruce has a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. So primarily we do a lot of jiu-jitsu and wrestling, but wrestling kind of fits into Sanda and jiu-jitsu. So why? And then sometimes why would I train other martial arts if I focus on Sanda so much? So for me, I started doing. I wanted to do MMA, so I had to do jiu-jitsu, and then I just kind of stuck with it. But what do you think? Yeah, because you did jiu-jitsu, so yeah, before I even met you.
Yeah. Well, I actually got beat up by a jiu-jitsu guy. I got strangled, so I thought I was a good striker. I thought I could, stop that. Obviously, I didn't, so I wanted to learn it. Right. I fell in love with it, but I love training, and I love competing in that atmosphere. So it's something that I've always enjoyed, whether it's Sanda or wrestling or jiu-jitsu. I love to train. I love to, be in that environment and train with my friends. So it's an easy thing. It's an easy thing for me to want to do all the time.
I think training other martial arts sometimes can complement in weird ways, like for Sanda and stuff. Like, so for jiu-jitsu, I think one of the best things that helped me, what doesn't really even have anything to do with like physicality, it helped me mentally. I think it kind of taught me jiu-jitsu, when you spar and you roll it on the ground, you're looking for submissions, arm bar, choke people. There's more of a culture of, when I say this, I don't mean it in a bad way, of losing, to where everybody who trains is going to lose and tap every day when they roll, every day. And it never goes away. Maybe you're the best guy in your gym, but you're not the best guy in your city, or you're going to get beat eventually, whether you compete or not. So I think it really helped me when it came to training for Sanda and stuff, is that I was able to allow myself to be like, look, I can relax about trying to win every round in sparring, or to where I can relax and I can try to do, to practice new things and try new things without the pressure of winning. Of having to be the best guy or winning. So jiu-jitsu really helped me with that and being able to just scale it back a little bit.
See?
Right.
If you got anything you want to say?
Well, I started training jiu-jitsu because prepare my first MMA fight, like Cory, and I started training with my best friend Danny and the Livingston. So it's like the first week, first few months, I got my butt kicked always, like every second, every minute, because we never touched this sport. Even right now, Livingston still hurt me. No, he didn't hurt me, but he showed me 2 days, the last days, But you realize, like, even you train hard, sometimes you're still missing a little piece for the puzzle. You just cannot complete the whole picture. So that's why I like to do different sport like jiu-jitsu, because they can make your game better and, better than someone else don't know about this sport, and also can help you push your mental, Sometimes you want to give up, but, lazy day, you don't want to go training. But after you step in the mat, sweat, get your butt kicked, and you feel like, yeah, I did,
Yeah, and it helps cardio-wise and strength-wise, I think so.
I think there's combat's combat, right? So there are principles in odd ways, balance, and the big thing about jiu-jitsu as well is the process. There's a process to train. There's a process to how you approach the sport in regards to, get into certain positions before you attack for submissions, right? So you can take certain elements of other martial arts and apply them to Sanda.
Yeah.
I don't just throw my hands to throw my hands. I do it with a purpose. Right? I have to understand how to play the game. Not only, if I want to get a knockout, that's great, but at the very least, I need to understand how to score, how to move, and how to win. So it will reinforce in odd ways, like you said, Cory, different principles. They complement each other very well.
Yeah, I agree. So next, we kind of talked about this earlier. How do you balance other aspects of your life while still finding time to pursue your goals in this sport? For me, so I work here, so I teach, so I don't have to really have that balancing act. So when I'm here, I'm pretty clocked in, and then when I go home, I just switch roles to dad and student. I would say that me and Livingston were joking earlier. It's hard when you really, when we talk about this, you have to keep in mind, if you're a, what would you call it? Hobbyist, like you train Sanda for fun and self-defense maybe and stuff like that. That's great. Like I'm not, but the reality is I'm kind of leaning more like when we're talking, we kind of had this in mind as being a competitor, not so much as a hobbyist. Not that one's better than the other, but that one doesn't have a primary focus or goal set up other than, I train a couple of times a week for fun, health, self-defense, and, because you like it. When you're a competitor, we were talking earlier, like, how do you find a balance? Sometimes it really feels like you can't. And it's really, really hard. So this goes back to what we were talking about earlier as far as in this culture in the U.S. and just the way it's set up in comparison to other countries that receive sponsorship. I don't know if you ever really find a balance because, you're working because you have to survive unless you have other alternatives set up. And then you're constantly trying to find enough time to train. And the reality is you can't ever train enough, right? Like you can always train more. So I don't know if you can have a lot of guys like, how do you juggle all these things? How do you balance those? Sometimes you don't. Like sometimes you're clocking in and you're busy and the days go by fast, the weeks go by fast, and you're tired. And sometimes you kind of feel like, what am I doing? I mean, all of us have been in that situation 15 times. It's to where it's just like, why am I doing this? Like I could just go to my job and go home and sit on my butt and watch TV, or I could go and just train a couple times a week. But the reality is that I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't sound somewhat arrogant. That's cool, but you'll never, ever get to do anything special. To go and compete, to travel, to win nationals, to go to another country, to compete against guys all over the world that don't speak the same language as you but want the same things you want, and a lot of times experience the same things you experience, that's really, really cool. And that's a an experience that I would say probably little to no people had. So, okay.
Well, the best part is just like what Cory said, experience in world championship or fighting. I think for me, best part is the process you training with your teammates. Like you share your idea with each other and help each other growing up. We all have the same goal. You want to be best in the USA. You get it?
No, I, like you said, you never feel like you have enough time.
No.
You always want more time to train. You want more time to diet, do more conditioning, whatever. But when you have a lot of responsibilities, you're always running against the clock.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of come to peace with the fact that you're not going to. You have to do the best that you can and realize that there's nothing else you can do beyond.
Now, here's where we get into the part where I mentioned earlier that probably even all the techniques and the drills and the actual training that we talked about earlier, this is probably the most important part to where, like, I wanted to have one of the classes, me and Bruce wanted to have a class where we didn't really talk about actual training and stuff because of this main point right here is how do you find the motivation to continue doing it after a long period of time, like after you've trained for years or a year? Because I can show you all the techniques and I can show you all these things that we've been teaching all summer. But the reality is that you will bump. Very few people are career. I don't like saying martial artists, but you can say that career martial artists. Very few people continue further than a year. I mean, like, so I can teach you all the techniques and they're flashy and they're cool and they're really special and we've seen them all. But the real question is how do you keep training when you don't want to? Because the reality is you don't want to. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody woke up every day their entire life and was like, man, I can't wait to get up and go jog 4 miles and then just go hit the mitts and hit the bags and get tired and get beat up at practice. Can't wait. Like it of course you enjoy it, but it's not something that you can sustain forever. So, but people do. So how do you do it? And that's a big question. So you two go, and then I'll wrap it up.
You go first, Bruce.
Coach Lee makes next.
Well, I think it's different, like what different people might say or different life, For me, it's like if somebody just give out in a halfway, and if I keep going, I think it's best because I know, like, sometimes you just get beat up, like what you say, you don't want to go anymore, but you have to give you motivation for yourself to get up and keep going. That's the best part of your life because at the end of the day, you tell yourself you make it. And I don't know.
I think a big part of it for me is it's a discipline. So I've disciplined myself to continually train throughout my life. Right? I've been doing it for over a decade. Half of it's just habit at this point in time. I don't feel right unless I'm doing it. Sanda specifically, though, is my teammates. I have lifelong friends that I've done this with. We've trained together for years. We've traveled together. Hard weight cuts.
Or you go to those experiences that no one else understands except us.
So, you and I have talked about this a lot. We'll train really hard. We'll have the Worlds coming up, Pan Ams are coming up or something, and it's hard to do it. We're a distance team. We're a lot of time you're training by yourself. But at the end of the day, when we get to train together, like this weekend, it just makes it worth it. You want to go tomorrow. You want to go travel again, compete tomorrow. You motivate each other. You feed off of each other. So for me, the team aspect is a really strong motivator. Not only do I want to succeed, but I want Bruce to win. I want you to win. I want everybody to win. And it helps push me to not only train hard for myself, but to train and represent the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of those things. I'm trying to think what made me or keeps me going. One is I don't want to be that guy. Like, I don't want to be the guy that quits. I don't want to be the dude that stops. Not that it's, and I'm not saying that if you did, it's wrong or right. Like, you know, I get it. I totally understand. I think, like what Livingston said, like when you have, it's really funny because Alex, Vincent, the guys that are on the team, when we all get together and we get to have those big training camps that we do before we go, man, it is like, it's just so much fun. And it's like the best thing ever. And you want to continue to do that. And that makes me want to keep doing it. It does wear you down and it does beat you up a lot. The motivation, man, I think at the end of the day, for me, it was just a matter of like, I wanted to see how far I could push it. And the second I stopped pushing, that was over. Like, oh, yeah, that's how far I can push it. Yeah, and you have to enjoy it, but it's not always enjoyable.
But there's also a difference too between what do you do it for, right?
Right.
So you and I have, and you as well, because we have the same mentality. We want to win.
Yeah.
I want to medal. You know, the first, your first nationals, that's great. That was your first milestone.
First steps.
But immediately thereafter, like when I walked off, it was like, okay, well now I have to win hands. Yeah. And then so now I have to win. So there's like this underlying motivation of like, I want to compete. I want to win.
Yeah.
And everything kind of reinforces each other, right? So like the team aspect, the discipline comes in, but there's an innate sense of wanting to do something. And it may just be like, I don't want to be that guy on the couch, you know, when I'm 60 that has no good stories to tell. He had no experiences. He had no adventures. If that's your motivation to keep going, then use that. You know, doing something, you train as often as you can, just so that you can say, yeah, I did something with my youth. I did something with the talent that I had. I pushed it as far as it could go. You know, there's a bit of a difference in mentality of that can be your motivation as like a hobbyist, right? Right. And you can also have a different set of motivation as a competitor. You want to win, you want the recognition, you want those experiences.
Yeah, and it's hard. Yeah, it's hard. And the reason is like, the reality is like there is a very small group of people that actually do it. And it's not going to be easy, and it's never going to be, it's not fun all the time. It's really hard. And sometimes, like, you know, like when you have to train for a big event, you know, like if we, like next year, hopefully everything gets better and we train for Pan Ams, and let's say all three of us try to do it. There's a real sacrifice in other people's part too. Like, you know, your coaches who spend time with you, your wife or your kids, they're like, hey, for the next 6 weeks, we all have to clock in and do this together. You have to have a support system, and you have to have, you know, it's rough. But the deal is man, I can't get over what's the alternative if you stop? You know, like obviously there's going to be a time we all stop, we get older, we can't do it anymore. But what's the alternative? Like, I mean, and the other deal is it's never training for this sport, man, and any other sport like this that's similar is never a sprint. It's a marathon, man. Like the guys who are the best are the guys who've done it the longest and the most consistent, period. Like, and you have to keep doing it, even when you lose, even when you get embarrassed, even when you get beat up, even when you can't sleep, when you're scared or when you're nervous or you're lazy and you're like, oh, I'd rather just hang out with my friends. Like those are all good and great, and I understand and they're all valid excuses for stopping, but you'll never be great at it. And I kind of feel about, I guess the last thing I'll say about the motivation is I somewhat feel that in a way, I tell myself that as long as and hard as I can do this and keep pushing, I know that I'll be able to handle anything else that comes up. Like it is by far the hardest thing you can do in your life. I fully 100% agree with it. I know people have PhDs and go to school forever, and that's a great accomplishment. Nobody's trying to kick you in your head every day when you do that. No one's, you know, you can go and, you know, there's so many really cool things that people do. I don't know anything else that could be compared as hard as training for the stuff that's similar to what we do. Those are real accomplishments because not only do everything to be good, you have to put in time, but very few things do you have to put in time and pain and wreck your body and frustration and quitting and embarrassing. it's embarrassing, and you have to do it in front of other people, and you're subject to other people's criticisms to where, like, you know, most fields and most things you try to excel at, like what Livingston does for a living, like, I don't know. How do I tell him he sucks at being an oil man? I don't know. You know what I mean? But anybody can say, oh, Bruce lost or Cory lost. Hi, you're not very good. Maybe you should stop. But you have no idea what it takes to do any of that. Or oh, maybe next time you should kick this way or that way. And it's somebody who doesn't know anything, who's never been there. It's really arrogant because you really don't understand.
I think, like Cory said, that because I would say we're all special. We do something, we do some sport not like other people will do it. You know, like Cory and Mackenzie been doing this sport so long already and never want to give up. Even they get punched and kicked on the head all the time. That's why we believe, because we believe ourselves. The best motivation is, like what you say, travel, telling different story. That's why the first time I want to make a team for USA, because I was maybe 16, 17, and Cory, Mackenzie, and some other fighters talking about their international trip. You know, how like hardcore car weight, they are dying in the sauna, how the way they fight, you know, screaming in the ring, out the ring. That kind of experience is not normal. People can get it.
It's not. You're not. Yeah, it's a different type of living.
Yeah, like we for sure fighting is dangerous, but after the fight, you know, you sit down, talk to your child, your family, say, "Hey, man, I did it." You know, for sure, my mom, my dad was scared when they saw my first international fights. But after that, I get out the podium. You know, first fight, you know, I didn't win, but I tell my mom, my dad, I did it. You know, my face still pretty. You know,
Are you sure?
Okay. Yeah, that was good. That was good.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I think one of the other big motivations that I didn't talk about is when you win.
Yeah.
When you win, and even when you lose, it's still worth it. Because I can remember, like, even when I win, actually, I feel more accomplished when I lose. This sounds really bad, but in a lot of ways, I feel more accomplished when I lose than when I win. Because when I win, at least me personally, it's kind of like, well, I was supposed to.
Yeah.
So you're supposed to win.
You have that pressure on yourself.
You're training to win. So for me, if I win, it's not that big a deal. I'm happy I won, but I'm not that happy. But when I lose, I'm not so upset that I lose, but I really feel like, oh man, I feel so good that it's over, and then I did but I got to really get back and try to do better. And you get more motivated by, you train for this peak moment, and you do it, and then you come back off the other end of it, and you're kind of more motivated to do. I'm more motivated to do it again, because it's like I like the experience of working really, really hard for something. I'm going to really, really test myself. I'm going to put it all out there. Anybody can judge me, and I can do whatever, and we're going to see what happens. And then when that moment comes, and if you come up short, that happens. If you win, awesome. But it really makes me hungrier for the next time if I lost, because I want to come back and win. Yeah, you know. And so motivation. Here we go. One that Bruce might not get to talk about as much is what is it like when you become more mature and older in this sport? If we had Grandpa Alex on here, we could probably ask him. But
love you, Alex.
Yeah, I like Alex too. But I don't know. This is something that, like, I really had to learn the last couple of years with my knee. I think the biggest deal is the older you get, well, it's like we were talking about having families and stuff and jobs, is the older you get, the more disciplined you have to be. I don't know if I necessarily became more disciplined, but I had to become more disciplined. I had to manage my time better. I don't have time to screw around and waste time. I think the biggest deal being mature is kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier for me, was after I had my knee surgeries, I really had to decide, like, man, I can't do anything for 2 years. I did, and I'm stupid, but I had to go back and have another surgery. But so I have to figure out now to where, you know, we have, you know, Bruce and Christian and these younger guys at the gym that are really good, and they're really young, and they're real strong, and they're on the way up, and I'm maybe honestly on the way out, like kind of coming down or plateauing, right? I'm not getting younger. And so there's moments where I'm kind of like, man, I it's not that I think I'm not as good anymore. I think that the way I have to prepare when you're older. And I remember Alex, and this, I wish Alex could have been here and we could have had him on it, and it would be like the full circle of, and Vincent, you'd have young to, you'd have young to kind of young to handsome to kind of old to mainstream with Alex. But it's like, I remember Alex used to tell me a lot, like, you have to really take care of yourself. You have to listen to your body, and you have to, you need to be smart about how you train. You can't go and bang it out with everybody, and you can't go and go to war every day, and you got to be really smart. And I used to think that was such a, not weak, but kind of like, what is he talking about? What are you talking about, man? Like, you got to go in here and go hard every day. Yeah. And then now I totally understand what he's talking about. Yeah. So,
painfully so.
Yeah, painfully so. So I think the older you get, and I had this conversation with a kid the other day, is you have to stop comparing. I have stopped. I don't compare myself to anybody in the gym. I don't care if I'm better than them. I mean, I probably am because I've done it better, done it longer. But I don't think about that anymore. Like, here's for example. If I spar tonight, right? If we spar Thursday night, I can't tell you what I landed, what I took him down with, what he took me down with. I can't tell you what the score was. I can't do it because I'm too busy in there. I'm trying to relax, have fun, try new things, and get better. To where before I was more concerned about winning and doing things. And so I'm about to turn the camera around on Coach Lee. So I think that's really, really important. And I think the younger that you can figure that out to where, listen, it's not about, nothing matters. Let's say me, Livingston, and Bruce train together every day. We come in, we fight hard. And let's say Livingston, I will go with Bruce because it's definitely not true, that he just beats me and Livingston up every day. We can't touch him. And it's just so hard. He's undefeated in the gym. Yeah. But what happens when we go what happens when we go to Worlds and me and Livingston win and Bruce gets beat up in the first 10 seconds? Does that mean anything? Does it mean that does Bruce's hierarchy in the gym and in sparring mean anything? Because no, it doesn't mean anything. The only thing that matters is who can get out there and perform when it's time to perform. Of course, there's ways to spar and train correctly in the gym, but I really had to let go of all that to where it's like, man, I'm not in here to be the number one guy. I'm in here to worry about myself. Well, of course, I coach and help each other with teams, but I'm in here to worry about myself. I'm in here to do what I need to do to get better. And if that means for me in my present physical condition is there's no more 5 days in a row of beating each other up, then that's just the way it is, and that's fine. And I can have fun, and I can let go of all that pressure. And by letting go of all that pressure, it makes training more fun. And by making training more fun, you can do it longer, and you can have more fun. So for me, that's the biggest thing that's changed for me as I got older.
I guess Bruce can talk.
Yeah, Bruce,
I'm still,
I really wish he'd mature. I really wish he'd get a little bit mature out of getting these haircuts.
Oh my God!
But I'm still waiting for that.
But yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head, man. When you're young, you're in a different mentality. You have a different mentality. I wonder, and we had those experiences where we were coming in 5-6 days a week, training really hard, and it gets to a point where, as you mature, maybe your priorities change a little bit. You become more wise.
You know what I think it is? Or when you're talking about it, I just kind of popped in my head with one of the things I think it is that Bruce is kind of there too. He's kind of, I don't think Bruce has this problem. But let's say some of the younger guys. I think one of the biggest things about it is me and you have the confidence now.
Yeah.
Because we've been there and done that to where it's like, man, I could really care less if the 19-year-old takes me down, because I know, like, hey, if I have to really do this, I can probably get you. You know what I mean? But I think that. But the other question is, I wonder if there's another way. Maybe it has to be that way.
I think it's natural.
Yeah, it's gonna.
It's natural because especially on a team sport, when you're talking about making the team, right, and you're younger coming up. I remember for me when I was first getting on the team, and there was Alex and Casey and all these guys. I felt like I had to bring it every single day. I had to try. And if I didn't train really hard and go for it, I wasn't actually doing my best. But as I gotten older, I've realized that, one, that's not reasonable to do anymore, time constraints and whatnot. But two, it's not necessary. And so, your training changes as you get older. It just has to. Your mentality changes. You're more confident. You don't feel the need to prove yourself in the gym every day. You don't feel the need to actually go out there and compete in training.
Yeah, right? Maybe the reason, the other reason, this kind of conversation that we're having is important is because there's a philosophy side. That sounds so weird, but it's true. There's a very serious philosophical side of training that doesn't get talked about, just because I don't think people spend enough time in the sport to figure it out and to really talk about it. I know Alex gave an interview earlier in one of these, and they asked him a lot of questions more about his career, but he kind of touched on it. And I think he said some good things similar to this. Is, you just have to be. It's at the end of the day, man. It takes a team to really push each other and get great. But at the end of the day, man, a lot of it really falls just right in between your ears, man. It's like I was saying, if you can figure it out and you can relax and be more confident and you can find the right way to train that fits you and makes you grow the most, then that's what you need to do. But the problem is there's a lot of things that will blind you to really finding what it is, whether it's your ego or your lack of confidence or your bad training partner. So there's so many things. A lot of things really have to go right for, I think, to come to the realizations that we've come to, right? And man, even in mentors, right? Like I was saying earlier, Alex, I remember Alex telling me all the time all this stuff, and I used to think, I'd be 21, it's crazy. Like, what is he talking about? But Alex was winning.
Alex is a great example because you can see his mentality as he trains, and he takes that same mentality and that same confidence and focus, and then he goes out there and wins.
Well, he does it in everything he does. Yeah. And the way Alex was a big. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but Alex was a really, really big inspiration to me and Livingston, a big inspiration and a big mentor to us, because he really, really showed me wow,
this matters.
What I thought it was about isn't what it's about.
Right.
He
has to
knows.
figure it out.
He doesn't care about the petty things in training, like who won this round or who went the hardest or he takes care of business in and every day. He trains smart. He listens to his body. If he needs to relax a little bit, he relaxes a little bit. But at the same time, he's extremely disciplined. So he's by far one of the most disciplined guys I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And because of that, it allows him to be successful in everything he does. Where now he's a great coach. You've got Paris and those guys doing their thing. He helped us. Now he coaches us for the teams, now that he's retired out. And it's man, and he's been there and done that. He's internationally known. He's by far the most well-known dude ever in the sport, right? As far as that comes from the U.S. And you can see it even when he competes. He'll have a round where his first round he'll go out there and he'll lose it or he'll do bad. He's so calm and collected. He'll come and sit down and listen to what Coach Lee says or whatever, and he'll go right back out there and make the changes and win because he can do that. But the only way you can get that way is through all the things we were discussing. Last but not least, what time is it, Bruce? Last but not least, cool. We got about 10 minutes, 15 minutes we can spend on this. Last but not least, what advice do you have for younger athletes coming into this sport? So we did a lot of that.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Do it because you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Come in, have fun, train hard, enjoy your training, but everything else comes afterwards. Fall in love with the sport first, and everything. Good things happen after that. I wouldn't come in with too many expectations, right?
Yeah, I think probably one, or at least for me, probably one of the biggest lies or misconceptions about this is, now when I say this, it's going to sound crazy, but I'll elaborate. It doesn't matter. Winning and losing doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay, of course, you're going to win. You're trying to win. That's your goal. You train hard to win. Now, when I say winning and losing doesn't matter, that doesn't mean you go in there unprepared and get beat up, and when you lose, it's, oh, it's cool. No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is when you put in when you're a new guy, you put so much pressure on yourself that you have to win. And if I lose, I'm a failure. End of the world. When you're young, that doesn't matter. What you have to do is if you train hard and you're motivated and you do what you're supposed to do, and it's any sport. This is my philosophy. Maybe somebody else is saying I'm wrong, and that's fine. But it's like no matter what the sport is, if you train, if you're disciplined and you train the way you're supposed to, and you train hard and you listen and do all the things right, when you compete, it doesn't matter if you win or lose, because if you lose, you're only going to learn a lesson. You're only going to get better. You're only going to change levels because, man, I made a mistake and now I understand why. And so you come back and you're going to get better and you won't make that mistake again. If you put so much stress on yourself about winning and losing or doing this or that, what ends up happening is you will hate the results that you get because losing is inevitable. There is no one in fighting that is undefeated. Floyd Mayweather lost his first 3 amateur boxing matches, I think. Right?
He's lost in the gym.
Yeah. And even if someone was undefeated in life, there was a day one where, Bruce is 16 and I'm 21 and he comes in to train and he's going to find out real quick he's not that good. So you lose in the gym. So winning and losing doesn't matter. What does matter is performing and training correctly and doing what you're told and in that strive for perfection. And look, I'm trying to get as best as I can. If you do everything correctly, all you can do is go out there, try your best, lay your cards on the table and see what happens. If you come up short, you come up short. People are better than you. People are always going to, there's no world champion in the world that's never lost. There's no world champion in the world that's never not going to lose. Unless he retires early, right? And even then, same thing. He got beat in the gym. I guarantee you, nobody walked in on day one and was the best fighter, grappler, Sanda athlete ever. He got beat up for years until he figured it out. So I think if I had to give advice for a young, like a Vincent who's coming in, is, man, he's the younger guy on the team. So I'm not saying he needs my advice other than and how to dress, because he dresses kind of funny. But him and Bruce. But he makes some strange TikTok videos. Yeah. His videos are a little strange. He does some crazy stuff. But that's the generational divide between me and Livingston and Bruce and Vincent.
Wait, I don't make any video, okay?
Okay, you can be on this side. Thank you. So we'll bring Bruce on this side. But yeah, the younger, that's a little weird for me. But anyways.
Grandpa Cory's letting all this.
Yeah, I see what you're doing, but I'm not going to put anything on there. But is that if you take a guy like Vincent, man, he's 21, 22, how young he is, you have so much time ahead of you to where, man, you just keep doing what you're doing, man. He trains hard. He trains correct. He's a good kid. He works hard. He has the determination to drive. Man, just keep doing what you're doing, and the results will come. It might be later. It might be later down the line. It might be another 3 or 4 worlds, but it'll come. It'll come if you keep doing it. It's all about perseverance and doing what you're supposed to. And it's the marathon. It's not a sprint. But when you're young and you're new, that's really, really hard to see. And it's really even hard to understand. Good? You got anything?
No, not this moment.
Oh, okay, cool.
Still thinking.
It's young guys. And granted, when I even know it's different now because in the way I coached, because I've always kind of coached because I've always worked at the gym, even when I was 22 or something. And I remember then what I would tell people then is different than how I would tell people now. You know what I mean? That's true. Because the way I coach now is different than the way I would coach then. Because I have more experience and I figured out that, man, maybe that's not the best way to go about it, right? Because I've learned from experience, all the mistakes and pitfalls you can make in training, and it's just like we were talking about. Alex was giving us great advice 10 years ago, and I just didn't really get it. I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
I would want so much detail and specifics. And when I was younger coaching, I would expect that out of students. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that sometimes, man, you have to encourage it. Like, you're doing fine. You're doing great. You know, even if it's not perfect now, it will be perfect. We'll work on it. We'll get there. But, you know, it's when you're young, it's hard to see and have that clarity. You know, it comes with time and experience.
Man, Cory told me this when I was maybe 20, 21. I've been kind of stopped a little bit, like 5 years ago. 5 years ago. Okay. Like I stopped 5 years ago. You know, I take a short break. You know, I said, man, this sport's really hard, really tough. You know, everyone's better than me and keep punching me, take me down. You know, they can get any position they want. I just like, okay, I don't want to do this no more. I get burned out. But yeah, right now I kind of feel like if Cory told me this stuff, I can just catch it like that. Probably they'll be help me a lot. You know, they tell me just keep training, push yourself harder. You know, I like 10 hours kind of, you know, crazy around. But the older I get, I kind of understand what they say. You know, like don't waste your time. You know, if like people care about you, say, hey, you did good, you train hard. Just keep going because they can see it. Sometimes you just...
Yeah, that's a good point. Good job, Bruce.
Thank you. You know, sometimes you don't see your progress, but your teammates, your family can see it.
Yeah, you can't see it.
Yeah.
You can't see it. You just see, and most people who are competitive and want to do this, they only see the bad. They only see the bad in what they do. They only see the bad parts. But yeah, a lot of times you just have to listen because you can't see it. You know, you just see, or you don't see it correctly. You know what I mean? It's a weird thing. Like it's a weird thing how it changes and how you it's like, and I kind of believe in a way after doing this, I really feel like almost everything's that way. The more you do it, the better you're going to get. And anybody can be great at it. It just takes time, but it's not going to be fast and it's not going to be immediate and it's not going to be easy. You know, of course there's freak accidents and things like that. And one of the things, another thing that you know, I was talking to Coach Lee about this. You know, I had always thought, like, if you look at another thing that young guys have to understand too is success isn't going to be immediate in the sport because the U.S. is playing with a different tool set. So, okay, so like I'm 33, Livingston is 32, and Bruce is 27. So like I've trained for 15 years and whatever we said in the beginning. Most athletes in China, they retire at my age or way before because they can pack all that time and training and experience and fight all the time in a lot smaller time frame than we can. So you like look at Alex. Alex won bronze last year and he was 39, 40 years old. And it's like I was telling Coach, I was like, man, maybe for our system and for our the way this sport is in our culture, that maybe that is the time to where we accumulate the experience and the lessons and the training and the skill sets to where we can start to really win and see the results of such a long time of working hard. But that would be the sacrifice. Is the playoff is we have to be very disciplined and do this in a very different way to be able to see the results at the end of our career, to where the other countries that receive the funding, they can train twice as much and do it twice as fast, compete twice as much because they have nothing else that they need to worry about. So if that's true, then for young people that come into the sport, they have to understand that, listen, this isn't it's not a hobby for me. It's a lifestyle. Like, I mean, it's a discipline. It's real. I think Livingston said this one time, and I feel goofy. I feel like, I don't know, saying this word, but like, you know, he asked, like, what are you before anything else? And the answer is like, well, I guess I'm a martial artist, right? Like, because I go to school, I teach, but at the end of the day, this is what I do, and I don't know if I can really get away from that. And when I do, like, sometimes I went on vacation, you know, last year, and I was gone for about 10 days. And, man, by about day 9, I'm ready to stop doing this. Like, I'm ready to go back to the gym and get back into my routine, see my friends, and get back to what I do, because I think the reason it's such a big deal is because it's a constant pursuit. It's a constant pursuit in perfection in something that's impossible to be perfect at. That should be a quote.
It's a practice.
On my tombstone.
Like a lifestyle.
It's a practice. Yeah, it's a practice. You'll never accomplish it. You'll never be.
You won't be perfect. You're never going to be perfect. So you have to accept it. You just have to grow, and you have to grow, and you have to keep pushing. And the younger you are to understand that, and the less pressure you put on yourself, man. I mean, in any sport, the UFC is the same way. Very few guys are great over the age of 30.
Like you said, it's a marathon, and if you have that mentality, it's easier to stay in the race, right? But if you're just out there trying to win immediately, you know, it's a flash in the pan, and you're going to burn out,
and then you become frustrated.
Yeah, exactly. You want to get out of it.
Long-term investment.
Long-term investment. Yeah, I mean, man, and you can look at it in any sport in America. And I can only talk about this culture in America because China and them are different. So, I mean, even in the UFC this weekend, you had Daniel Cormier and Stipe last weekend. Man, he's 43 years old. Yeah, he's like 43. He's 40. 40? Okay, 40. He's 40 years old. They're both about 40. I mean, it makes sense because it takes time. You're not going to be able to be a world champion at 21 unless you have a very different situation than most of us. And that might be possible, but it's not common. And in 15 years, I haven't seen it. So, I think the best thing for younger guys coming on the team is, look, just relax and accept that if you have a goal that you want to medal in this sport or maybe any other sport, you have to understand that, like, listen, this is going to take time and it's a long process. But it's not a bad process. It's fun. And it's fun.
Yeah.
There's so many perks of health, being in shape, having fun, having friends for life, having skill set, and the other thing that's really important, the ability to understand yourself better than anybody else. Like, most people don't understand what they're capable of.
Under stress.
Like, I know perfectly well what I'm capable of doing and enduring better than most people who don't. Because we've done a lot of things that are really hard, really dumb, really hard. And so, you know, if the quicker they can understand that look, it's a long-term investment, I think that the chances of them being and are the USA in this sport, especially with like Alex, especially with Coach Lee and Alex now being a part of it, me and Livingston when we get a little bit older, and kind of not running the sport, just say mentoring these guys and being more involved. I think once these guys understand that, I think we can really start to do a lot better. Agreed. Cindy, what time you got?
You guys have about 1 minute. Do you want to do a conclusion? And the last session.
Did you say there's a question?
No, I said, do you want to do a conclusion since this is your last session?
The final one? Man, I had a lot of fun. It was kind of weird for me to do these online things in the beginning, and then I thought me and Bruce we were kind of nervous about it, but then now I'm like, no, pretty good at this. But no, I really enjoyed it, man. I think it's a really cool thing that the USAWKF is doing, and I just thanks for all those guys and Coach Lee and everybody that made it possible for us to do it. And we had talked about this earlier. We're setting up the first Sanda online training program. So it's based on subscription and stuff like that. We're going to put it's hard to find good Sanda instruction and to learn from guys like Coach Lee or Livingston and Alex, guys that fought. So there's only, a few of us. So it's going to be really cool. It's going to be at sanda.teachable.com. So, man, definitely check it out. And we are going to keep doing this whole online teaching thing and making videos.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your special appearance.